Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 951A, and today's date is April 21st, 2016, and the title of the episode is Central Bankers Pushing for Wealth Confiscation and a Global Tax. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, when we look around the world at the private Western central bank countries, we're starting to realize that they're in deep, deep trouble. Worse trouble than we even thought. And I know the corporate media, Europe is trying to make it seem like everything is all back to normal. The debt level has dropped a little bit. And I remember back in 2013 when the EU was out there and they were convincing everyone that they're out of the recession, everything is fine, unemployment's going to drop dramatically. Hollande was out there saying the same exact thing. This was back in 2013 of August. And this is when we had the sarin gas, because a false flag. And they really thought at that time that they were going to go into Syria, then Iran, and everything was going to be okay. And this is why they were out there telling everyone this, but it never materialized. And the economy at that point didn't go anywhere. Actually, it got worse as time went on. And we're starting to see throughout these countries, not just here in the United States, that things are starting to rapidly deteriorate. Out in the UK, we see retail sales. They have posted their biggest monthly decline in more than 2 years in March. And we see, if we exclude auto out there, their retail sales have fell by 1.6% from February. And total sales dropped 1.3%. This is the second month in a row that this has happened. Food sales fell by 1.9% in March. And non-food sales dropped by 1.5%. And this is showing us that the global economy right now is now rapidly falling apart. The people are feeling it. More and more people are being laid off. And they just don't have the money to go out and spend. Now, we've seen companies in the last couple of months come out and say, yes, we're laying off tens of thousands of people. But the U.S. government is continually putting out that everything is fine. The initial jobless claims, well, they're at the lowest since 1973. All of these people who are being laid off at this point, I guess, what? They're not counted? Well, we know they do that. They don't count them. And the question is, if we go back to 2015, if we go back to 2014, we're talking about 1 million people who've been laid off from high-paying good jobs. And we know it's getting harder and harder for people to find good paying jobs. We know we are living in a part-time economy where a lot of people are taking part-time jobs. And now that's even starting to slow because we're starting to see that stores are closing more rapidly. We see the restaurant performance index is declining. The traffic is drying up, and we're going to see a lot more people not filling these positions. And we're going to see restaurants start to close. I mean, this is all part of it. And this is why we see the continuation of retail contracting, restaurants starting to contract now, housing contraction, but they're trying to convince us that everything is fine. And we see that Americans, they're having a very, very tough time. 47% of Americans, they don't even have $400 for an unexpected emergency room visit. And we have to go back in time. I mean, if we go back to 1971, 61% of all Americans lived in middle-class households. The majority of American workers have jobs that today would be considered low-paying jobs. In fact, about 51% of all American workers make less than $30,000 a year. And this is according to the Social Security Administration. And once you account for inflation, guess what? They're making a lot less. And during the Obama recovery, we actually have seen poverty in America explode. So here are some numbers. The number of Americans that are living in concentrated areas of high poverty has doubled since 2000. In 2007, about 1 out of 8 children in America, they were on food stamps. Today, it's 1 out of every 5. 46 million Americans use food banks each year. They get to the food banks by 6:30 in the morning because food runs out. The number of homeless children in the U.S. have increased by 60% over the past 6 years. According to Poverty USA, 1.6 million American children slept in homeless shelters or some other type of emergency housing. So if this is the wealthiest, most powerful country in the world, why do we have more than 1 million children that are homeless? Why has poverty increased? Why has the incomes of people decreased? Because right now in this country, the economic disaster has already hit. Of course, the government doesn't want to admit this, but people are already feeling it. And it's going to spread. It's been spreading since 2008. And the next wave is going to be absolutely disastrous. Now, we've had the Philly Fed back in February come out and say, wow, we had the best month ever. The Philly Fed jumped to like 12 points. I don't understand how it happened because, the 8 times previous to this, it was all in the negative range. And then all of a sudden, it dropped right back down to negative 1.6. Now, they thought it was going to be hitting a 9 print, but guess what? It didn't happen. So why did this happen all of a sudden last month? Well, there's no real indicators of why this actually happened. Was this pushed up to make everyone believe that everything is back to normal? Well, everything is not back to normal. Actually, it is getting worse. Current shipments index fell from 22.1 to negative 10.8. And we're seeing that last month, where we had this push up, was an anomaly. Now, did the central bankers, did the U.S. government, did they try to push this up as best they can? I'm sure the data is going to come out later and we're going to find out, oh yes, look what happened. They did push it up. But we're starting to see that every time they try to make it look like the economy is doing well, the real economic indicators rear their ugly head. And we're starting to see it in housing. We're starting to see it in retail. We're starting to see it in the Philly Fed, the New York Fed. And we're starting to see it all over the place where everything is declining rapidly. And no matter what they do at this point, it cannot be stopped. Now, we have a major problem with Central States Pension Fund, which handles retirement benefits for the current and former Teamsters Union truck drivers across various states like Texas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Missouri, New York, and Minnesota. And it is one of the largest pension funds in the nation. And it has filed an application to cut participant benefits, which would be effective this year in July, because it's projecting right now that it's going to be insolvent by 2025. Now, over 250,000 people depend on their pensions right now, and this is their only source of fixed income. Now, think about this for a second. They're on this fixed income, they're going to lower this, and we're going to see inflation rise. This is going to be a complete disaster. And this covers about 1 million workers' benefits. And this is going to be something that we've never seen before because people are going to get very, very upset about this. And this is going to create a national crisis. And eventually, millions of retirees and their families, it's going to open the floodgates for other cuts. And this is going to be a domino effect, and others are going to do this. And who is this going to hurt? This is only going to hurt the people that are trying to get by every single day. And you can see right now that they paid into this all their lives. They were expecting these benefits, and now they're going to be cut. Now, we talked about FATCA quite a bit, and we know that right now that this is a U.S. law that forces every financial institution in the world to give the IRS information about American clients. And a lot of countries signed on to this because otherwise the U.S. was going to place sanctions on them. And we see that FATCA was not just to bring revenue into the country, but FATCA is being used for another reason. Now, FATCA brings in around $900 million per year on average. I mean, that sounds great, but when you really look at the federal government deficit of about $438 billion, it's around 0.2% of what they really need. So why would the U.S. government go to the enormous cost and trouble of implementing FATCA? Well, they have a bigger agenda on their plate here. And what they're going to do is they're going to create something called GATCA. So those countries that are complying with FATCA, they're going to be shifted into GATCA. And they iron this out during an economic planners, central planners meeting of the G20. And this will be the new global standard. And what they're going to do is they're going to have a permanent record of every penny you have earned, saved, borrowed, and spent anywhere in the world. And it will be instantly available for analysis and scrutiny by countless government agencies. So they're also planning a global tax. Now, there are a lot of bankrupt governments. They're heavily in debt. And it would allow them right now to fleece and control their citizens more efficiently. It's only the failed welfare states that are drowning in debt that really want this. So the government is selling FATCA the same way it originally sold the income tax to Americans. We're only going to target the rich, but eventually what they're going to do is they're going to target everybody. And they're going to keep track of everyone's wealth. And basically what it is a wealth confiscation. They want a global tax. The IMF, Christine Lagarde, has been talking about this because they realize right now the debt levels are way too high and they need the people to give up more to pay this down. Now, do they want to pay it down all the way? Absolutely not. Now, we see that Jack Lew from the US Treasury, they announced plans to replace President Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill with Harriet Tubman. Now, they're also looking to, change the $5 bill and maybe the $10 bill. But what's very interesting about this is they're making a big deal that, these presidents, they had slaves and we have to get them off the dollar bill, the 20, the 10, the 5. And we have to remember, if we go back in time, is that the world was very, very different at that point. And many congressmen, senators, presidents, landowners had slaves. Now, is this right? Absolutely not. No other human being should have another human being as a slave. That is absolutely wrong. And everyone is equal. We're all on the same playing field here. We all have 2 arms, we have 2 eyes, we have 1 brain, we have 2 legs. We're exactly the same. And what they're trying to do is, at this point, convince everyone this is why they're doing it. But when you really look at this, you see that Andrew Jackson, what did he try to do? And what did he succeed in doing? Well, he got rid of the central bank. He called it a hydra-headed monster. And he got rid of the central bank. If we look at Jefferson, he opposed the first bank of the United States, giving private interests the power to create money. He got Congress to refuse to renew its charter. So again, central bank. Andrew Jackson, the central bank. Lincoln, well, they can't say that, he owned slaves and he was for slavery. But it looks like they're trying to remove him from the $5 bill. And what did he do during the Civil War? Well, he created money outside of the central bank called the greenback. And in 1862, he made it legal tender, and the government was creating its own currency. And of course, afterwards, when he was shot dead, the central bank stepped in and got rid of it. So, to me, what it looks like the central bankers are doing at this point is they're trying to get and erase the history of those people that fought against the central banking system. If you notice, we're never taught about the central banking system throughout school or how currency is created. I mean, we're taught that the Fed is good. We're taught that, yes, they create the currency, but we're never taught exactly what all these people have done and how bad the central banking system is for the people. I mean, this is what the founding fathers fought against. And it looks like this is part of their plan. And this is the reason why they're doing this at this point. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.